check. Toot, 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 toot.
Rolling.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, here we go.
Hold. Sing it again. Alexander. Who's the greatest? Yes, you are. It's Alexander. He's our commander. The dad was killed. Your moms were weird. You've conquered most of the Western world. Do you want to try that again?
No, it was great.
It does good to my soul. Oh, look at the pyramids.
332 BCE, Alexander the Great invades Egypt and changes the course of Egyptian and world history forever. Hello and welcome to History is a Joke, a podcast where we deep dive into different stories from history. This week I am joined by Mel and Steph. Neither of them have heard this story before, so they will be asking questions along the way and helping me tell this tale to its fullest comedic effect. Today we will be discussing the Great Lady of Perfection, Excellence in Counsel, the Great One, Sacred Image of her father, the goddess Cleopatra VII, Thea Philopator. The name Cleopatra comes from two ancient Greek words, hence Alexander the Great, Kleos, meaning glory, and patre, meaning father. In fact, Alexander the Great's sister was named Cleopatra. Alexander's father, Philip II, was famously and tragically assassinated at Cleopatra's wedding. Let's start with a quick rundown of the periods of Egyptian history. Everyone grab out a pencil and a piece of paper.
Thank you. Yep.
We have prehistoric Egypt. This is anything before 3000 BCE, basically Stone Age era Egypt. Then we enter ancient Egypt. This is where all the classic Egyptian tales, sans Cleopatra, come from. Within the ancient period, we have early dynastic period, when Upper and Lower Egypt unified, creating Egypt's first kingdom and pharaoh, Menes or Narmer, two names now known to be for the same person, the first monarch of Egypt. Next is the Old Kingdom period. This is the golden age of Egypt, trademarked by Baron von Baron von Bunsen. That's a tongue twister. That's his real name.
Oh, that's quite a name. I got it. I've thought of it. Will be the golden age of Egypt. My name is Baron von Bunsen, which is just I got bullied a lot in school.
The pyramids at Giza were constructed during this golden age. The pyramid and temple at Djoser? I'm going to have to look that up. The Great Sphinx. There's an intermediate period, a lot of those. Then the Middle Kingdom, another intermediate period. Then the New Kingdom. This is where most historians would place the Moses story and the Jewish Exodus. Yet another intermediate period, and then the Late Period. It's at the end of the Late Period where we begin this tale with the conquest of Egypt by the Greek belligerent Alexander the Great. Any questions so far?
No.
Alexander, personally educated by Aristotle. Just think about that for a second.
What happened to Aristotle? Didn't he get... Because
Like, how did he die?
I think he got killed,
Did he get hit by a car? I think he got hit by a car.
I don't know.
He probably
I don't
died
know.
when he was like either 40 or like 120. Like whenever that age was, like in BCE, where people were living to like 900.
Yeah.
So he probably I think he lived a very long life. I feel like I've seen him a lot.
I've seen him around. Alexander had recently been on a world-conquering tour with modern-day Turkey, Syria, Jordan, and Israel, all taken from the Persians. Next, he set his sights on Egypt. The largest Persian resistance en route was a siege at the Gaza stronghold. After several attempts, Alexander and his well-documented military brilliance toppled the enemy fortress. One thing I will say about Alexander is he frequently, after conquering cities, he would kill every man and boy of fighting age and sell all the women and children into slavery. Not every time, but enough times. Gaza was one of them. Anyway, Alexander Yeah.
Wait, I have a question. So, like, military brilliance, do you know what his strategy was? Like, going in, with his buddies? I don't know, I'm curious,
One of the strategies was you mean in terms of, like,
Murder.
Being ruthless was one of them. That was what everyone thought back. It still kind of is something that people think, I guess, that the more ruthless you are, the more of a great whatever leader, conqueror. I think he invented a lot of military strategies, and if I cared or was interested in that sort of military history or military theory, I think that he developed that and was really into that sort of thing on where to put people and how to, the art of war, or whatever you want to call it. And I was being a little bit like sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek with the military brilliance thing, but that is how he's remembered. And if that is a thing that you are interested in learning about or being educated in, he's kind of like one of the big figures in that sort of topic or field or whatever. But I couldn't cite any specific like tactics or that he did, because I just didn't really look into that. But he was supposed to be a great military strategist. He would have been great on like Age of Empires or like, World of Warcraft.
I love that you like literally covered every other aspect of it, and Melly had one single question and it happens to not be covered in this giant text. I'm gonna look it up.
But yeah, part of it was the ruthlessness and, how do you keep at least in the short term, enemies from coming back at you, or from a recently conquered territory from uprising. You kill everybody who could possibly do it. That'll keep you at least for a generation or two. Will keep you things under control. So that was one of the tactics. So there's one in there. Did I mention selling all the women and children into slavery? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, we nailed that.
Alexander was welcomed in Egypt as a liberator from the Persians. He restored the pyramids. The Persian rulers had let them deteriorate. He paid respect to the Egyptian religion, including a visit to an oracle where he was pronounced son of Amun-Ra, the famous deity from the New Kingdom period, if you'll remember. You all remember, right?
Of course, of course.
Alexander also made a holy sacrifice at Memphis and founded the massive and state-of-the-art city of Alexandria, named after himself. Alexander had much more conquering to do and left Egypt more or less right away, leaving behind a new lineage of Greek rulers of Egypt. This is the start of what's known as the Greco-Roman Egyptian period. Alexander remained pharaoh of Egypt as he continued his conquering until his untimely or timely death, given the amount of battles this guy started, in 323 BCE. Upon his death, there was, as there always is, a leadership crisis over Alexander's massive empire. In Egypt, Perdiccas, a general of Alexander's, briefly ruled Egypt as a proxy for Alexander's half-brother, this gets really dense, who also briefly became king of Macedonia, the Greek homeland. While awaiting the birth of Alexander's child, Perdiccas appointed one of Alexander's closest generals as yet another temporary watch over Egypt. His name was Ptolemy. This tricky guy watched Alexander's empire crumble after his death and sat tight in Egypt, soon declaring himself ruler in his own right. Perdiccas, presumably Perdipist, attempted to re-invade Egypt. Ptolemy successfully defended this and several other attacks by ex-Alexander generals.
I just want to make note that I read this as Ptolemy. Like, for sure, use the P. Like, just no questions asked. And I was like, I think Zach said it wrong.
I have to keep myself from saying Ptolemy because it's fun.
Like
it's kind of fun.
Idiot. It is, but I obviously the P silent, and I fully was like, no, I think it's Ptolemy. Yikes!
I'm sure that it's not entirely silent. I'm sure that it's in there because it's trying to convey some sort of a local pronunciation. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's quite as hard as Ptolemy.
Yeah, I don't think so.
As fun
either.
as that is to do. I've heard Ptolemy on all the pronunciations I've had, but
no, I'll go with you on this one.
No, you can say Ptolemy. I think that's fun. Anytime you refer to it, we'll just do that. Or P-Dog, something like that. I think is great.
Yeah. P. Yeah.
Or
Pele.
Do you think
life,
they had
money.
names like that back then, though? You know?
Yeah, they had to have. They must have.
Like, his closest guys are definitely calling him P-Dog as they roll into battle.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there a ton of, like, gay stuff happening right now, like, in this era, too? I think they all were sleeping with each other. And always.
You get a group of men together, some of them are going to sleep with each other.
Zach, I would bet a lot on that. But I would think that they would all be close enough that they would be, Little Petey.
Alexander, definitely there was his closest partner or whatever. I mean, yeah, these guys go off to war for years and years and years, and there's no, come on, give me a break. I mean, well, kind of like, I mean, Alexander specifically, there were a lot of rumors about his sexuality and different theories, and he had a very close person. I mean, he had different wives and stuff, but he had a very close male friend who was, at most a great, life partner in that sense, but possibly something else. Also, like we learned about with the Joan of Arc thing, there are ecosystems that follow these large armies around. People who sell things, including sex of all different kinds, and that's a huge kind of economy that follows these things around. So
it's interesting.
Yeah, people are getting their freak on in all kinds of ways.
Good for them. Good for them.
More power to you. Okay, where were we?
Sorry. Okay.
Ptolemy, that's where we were.
Yeah.
Finally in 305 BCE, Ptolemy declared himself savior of Egypt and crowned himself King Ptolemy I Soter, beginning a 300-year reign of Greek-Egyptian monarchs. It is here, 69 BCE, at the end, talking about getting our freak on, at the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, in the city of Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, that Cleopatra VII is born. So she's Greek, if we didn't get that already, which is interesting, because I always, thought...
Yeah, me too.
Cleopatra, Egypt, she's Egyptian, but it's like not for hundreds of years was any, like all of these places are, someone else was ruling over them for as long as... I mean, this is ancient history. Forget about all the colonialism and imperialism that comes later on. These people are doing it forever. At this point, we find the first of many mysteries surrounding Cleopatra. Who was her mother? Maury? Anybody? That's usually the father, though, isn't it? Can you do a reverse test? Can someone go on Maury and say who is the mother? Has that happened?
I'm sure that he has had enough airtime that they've also had to discover the mother.
One might assume it was the then wife of Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII. Cleopatra VI. They are all named either Cleopatra or Ptolemy.
Was no one creative, or were they very, airheaded,
I think it was the airheadedness that is like, I mean, yeah, for 300 years earlier, Alexander's sister's named Cleopatra, and they're still doing it.
That is so wild.
Everyone's daughters, Cleopatra, and everyone's sons, Ptolemy.
Yeah, creativity wasn't, born till AD. Yeah.
With a few exceptions. I'm assuming it was probably firstborns, because, as we'll learn here, however, Cleopatra's mom disappears from records only months after Cleopatra VII's birth, and Ptolemy goes on to have 3 more children. Arsinoe, Cleopatra's sister, and 2 more Ptolemies. As royalty, Cleopatra was privately tutored and studied at the Library of Alexandria, founded by Macedonian scholars and built by the second Ptolemaic ruler of Egypt. The library was one of the largest in the ancient world. It is unknown exactly how many scrolls were kept in the library. Estimates range from 40,000 to 400,000 papyrus scrolls. Many a great thinker and philosopher worked and researched inside the building, quickly gaining the city of Alexandria a reputation for world-class education. 400,000 papyrus scrolls.
So much, that's a lot of hand cramps. Because you would think it'd be like an ink and feather at that point.
Yeah. I thought you were just going to say from rolling them up and unrolling them.
Oh, no. I didn't even think about that, but it would be too.
Someone has to close them. This is one I needed. Roll them up. Didn't find what I was looking for.
Actually did hurt my wrist already.
We went through 300 scrolls. Yeah, can you imagine trying to find something? I wonder how the organization was.
Yeah.
Were they labeled on the outside or something?
I'm sure. I can't imagine. A library with, like, just shelves.
Just a pile.
Or they just have, like, the old librarian. You know, like the old creepy librarian who's the only one that knows where stuff is.
Yes.
At this time, the Roman Empire... Sorry, it's not an empire. I made a mistake.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Republic. It's a republic. At this time, the Roman Republic ruled a large ring around the Mediterranean, eclipsing the once great Greek territories. With Roman land and forces on either side of the Greek Ptolemaic Egypt, it was quite precarious and threatening. Rome was both an ally and an enemy. The relationship was complicated as they are today. Think of our relationship with China. We do a massive amount of trade and business, act as friends most of the time, but spy on each other constantly and could very easily slide into a major military conflict. Rome openly wished to claim Egypt, and in 58 BCE, they acted on those wishes. They annexed the Cyprus Islands, causing Cleopatra's uncle and current ruler of the island to murder himself instead of being exiled.
Wait.
Ptolemy
Murder himself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I've never heard it said like that before in my whole life. That was the hardest way to hear that. I'm going to tell you right now.
Really?
Murder himself?
Is that sadder?
Yeah.
I was just trying to avoid that word.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but I think it's harder.
Well, what else should I say?
No, do this. Do this one.
The current ruler of the island to slip on a banana peel and hit his head instead of being
The current
to
ruler of the
purposefully
island
slip
held his breath and he drifted off to sleep.
Sat in his car inside the garage for a little too long.
I've literally never, this is not relevant at all.
Well, people say like unalived or whatever, which I think is kind of like...
Yeah. No, I just have literally like...
People are trying to find different ways of,
just,
saying it.
no, I so appreciate it. No, this is like Steph to Zach saying, I've literally never heard it said like that, and I've never thought of that. And it's really sad. But that's what it is. So, carry on.
Ptolemy kept the news of Cyprus and his brother hidden from the Egyptian public, something you could feasibly do back then. This decision ensured two things. Rome would retain the island, and the public would turn against Ptolemy when they eventually did find out, because even back before phones and the internet, one can't keep a secret forever, especially something that large. Which is exactly what happened. Ptolemy was forcefully exiled from Egypt. He bounced from spot to spot along the countryside, eventually settling down and spending a year camped outside of Rome, attempting to persuade sympathetic Roman lawmakers and influencers to aid his return to ruling Egypt. And Ptolemy did not travel alone. He took his favorite daughter with him, 11-year-old Cleopatra.
Wait, what about the other kids? Did he just... was he like, no,
shits.
just you?
They weren't good enough.
He didn't care. I presumably, yeah, they were left behind. He took his favorite... Cleopatra was his favorite, by far. So he took his favorite daughter and, there were other institutions and probably people to care for them. But yeah, he abandoned his family, essentially, sounds like.
Oh my God.
It's gotta be rough, though, because your parents are like, I'd never pick favorites. But then when it comes down to it...
Yeah.
Back then, and in royalty, that's not a thing. There's a favorite for sure.
100%. And thank God that he did, because now we have Cleopatra. You know what I mean? Like, he knew. He knew she was important.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew she was important. Or she was important just because of this.
True.
Or both.
Yeah, he's just the only one that survived of the kids.
Well, we'll find out that that's unfortunately, or fortunately, not true.
Ugh.
There was some failed diplomacy outside of Rome. The two left to reside inside the Temple of Artemis in modern-day Turkey. Eventually, the Roman governor of Syria was convinced to lead the invasion of Egypt to reinstate Ptolemy. This, as you might be wondering, was not condoned by the larger Roman government. And while the Egyptian campaign was successful and reinstated Ptolemy and Cleopatra as the rulers of Egypt, it led to the exile of the Syrian governor. Lots of exile back then.
Yeah.
Also during the campaign, a young Mark... Oops, I said Anthony. It's Anthony.
Young Mark Anthony.
I love that. Pre-J-Lo.
A young Mark Antony, riding in the cavalry in the Roman army, claims that he met the then 14-year-old Cleopatra and fell in love.
Sicko.
Yeah, that's concerning.
There's also a lot of that back then, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone's Mark Anthony, and someone's Ptolemy.
Oh, wait. I have a vibe for Mark Antony. I'm very ready for
I'll be
this.
Patols. Yes, we've done it. You Roman bastards have done it. Egypt will be mine again. I mean, ours again. They're mostly mine. Now let's kill all the women and children.
Wait a minute, sir. We cannot do that. Also, I don't know why I called you sir. I don't work for you. We are not gonna murder all these people.
Then what do you suggest we do with them?
How about I marry your daughter?
What?
Like I could rule over them.
But I still get the rest of Egypt?
I mean, yeah, sure.
All right, that's fine. All right, fine. Then I'm still gonna kill a few on the way out. One more time, Zach. All right, that's fine then. But I'm still gonna kill a few of them on the way out. And scene.
In 51 BCE, at the age of 18, Cleopatra ascended to the throne after the passing of her father. Several crises immediately challenged Cleopatra, including a widespread famine created from a drought and less than normal flooding from the Nile, an annual natural event that ensured fertile farmlands in the surrounding areas. Additionally, there was a rampant crime due to the idle and unemployed former Roman soldiers, left behind from the Roman-assisted invasion that reinstated Ptolemy and Cleopatra. So that's interesting because they had this invasion. They asked for a bunch of soldiers. The invasion happened, and then the soldiers are out of work, and they're just standing around living there, and they're bored and don't have a job, and so they're just like robbing people and just causing trouble.
Yeah, that's what happens. You ask for people's help, and then you're just like, yeah, good luck.
Speaking of which, Cleopatra also inherited her father's debt to the Romans, a bill of over 17 million drachmas. Hard to equate, but that might be anywhere from 10 to 100 times in today's US dollars. Cleopatra...
I just want to say one quick thing. The pinging you keep hearing on my laptop is your mom texting me, but I can't see what it is.
Is my mom texting you?
Yes. I just looked and I was like, who keeps pinging? And it just says Chris Hamer, 4 unread.
There's an emergency going on apparently.
Sorry, keep going. I just could not believe it.
Cleopatra and her brother, you guessed it, Ptolemy the 13th, were supposed to be co-rulers of Egypt after their father's death. However, less than a year into their co-rule, Cleopatra begins to be referred to as the sole leader of Egypt. This could be because she somehow forced her brother out or married him, as was common for Ptolemaic royalty. What we do know, could you marry your brother to be king of or queen of Egypt? Just as a formality?
Like no.
Melly, you have a brother? Yeah, just formality-wise.
I would murder myself. Oh my God.
Do you have a brother, Melly?
I have a stepbrother, but that's just a definite no in a million years.
A hard
not
pass.
A chance.
Okay.
No.
No.
Cleopatra was ready to do what she had to do. See, that's, I guess that's the difference. That's the biggest difference.
That's why we're here, and she was there.
Yep. What we do know was her brother remained alive and a thorn in her side, clearly hurt by his leadership role being retracted. His anger eventually led to a military conflict within Alexandria, where Cleopatra's army fought against pro-Ptolemy the 13th forces. In the midst of this conflict, Gnaeus Pompeius...
Ooh.
Do you think his parents were like, this needs to rhyme? Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like they were having no fun during this age, so when they named him, they were like, let's have a little bit of fun, okay? For once in our life. Gnaeus Pompeius.
That's where all the joy came from. What was the other one? Burner von Brunson or whatever?
Yeah, people are really having a time. If they survive childbirth, they're like, this is the best.
Gnaeus Pompeius, the son of Pompey, the current ruler of Rome, arrives asking for military aid. A man named Caesar has been waging a civil war against Pompey in Rome, eventually causing Pompey to flee Greece, another flee. If we're playing a drinking game, take a shot every time we flee.
That's 2 fleas.
Every time there's an invasion or a flee, You take
Or
a shot.
yeah, or some person is named after each other. Yeah.
Or there's a rhyming name. Or siblings marry. This is when Gnaeus, Pompey's son, shows up in Egypt requesting help. Oddly, despite their own bloody conflict, Cleopatra and her brother, P-Man XIII, agreed to aid Pompey and send 60 ships and 500 soldiers. This also helped relieve some of the debt owed to the Romans. Cleopatra eventually lost the battle with her brother and had to, once again, flee Alexandria to Thebes.
These people must be really fast.
So tired. So fast, but so tired. Yeah. Also, where's there left to flee to? You know what I mean? Like, not that much has been conquered at this point. So, like, limited fleeable real estate.
You're fleeing close. You're not fleeing far.
It's like everyone just moves next door. Like, whenever they flee, it's just like to the neighbors.
Exactly. And then they come back real soon. It's like when you run away when you're a kid.
Yes, they're just hiding in the woods and they come back for dinner. Yeah.
In usual Ptolemaic fashion, she asked the Romans for help, specifically Roman Syria, where she gathered an army to yet again invade Egypt. But Cleopatra's forces were prevented from entering Alexandria by her brother's army. Meanwhile, in Greece, Pompey and Caesar clash at the Battle of Pharsalus. Pompey, feeling pressured by his generals, engages with Caesar and suffers a punishing defeat. With most of his army destroyed, Pompey, you guessed it, fled, take Jake. Everyone is either invading or fleeing, Ptolemy or Cleopatra. Pompey fled to friendly Alexandria in Egypt. However, Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra's brother, feared this would bring the Roman civil war to Egypt. So, they stabbed Pompey, Caesar's rival and son-in-law, to death by invite in Alexandria, embalming and sending his severed head to Caesar.
Just like tough goes all around for Pompey. You know what I mean? Just throughout history.
Caesar, possibly, was torn by this act, as it was the death of a family member, but also his direct rival, but also interfered in his war, but also won it for him. So lots of emotions. Determined to settle the dynastic dispute in Egypt, Caesar landed in Alexandria and took up residence in the then vacant royal palace. As Cleopatra and Ptolemy dueled it out, rebuking the Ptolemaic interference in his war, Caesar scolded the two siblings and called for them to disband their armies and cease the fighting. Ptolemy XIII comes in hot to Alexandria in defiance of Caesar, further angering him. Cleopatra, on the other hand, knowing Caesar's weakness for women, takes another angle. The fun myth is she had herself smuggled into the palace bedroom where Caesar was staying, so she could seduce him from inside his chambers. However, the likely and more historically accurate version was she dressed attractively, for the time, of course, and used her wit and skill to charm the pants right off of Caesar. And it worked famously. When let's just jump in there for a second. Someone want to be Cleopatra and someone want to be Caesar?
Yes.
Maybe I'm thinking let's think like cocktail party, there's like background piano, music kind of going on. You got, you're kind of, you run into each other in the room, kind of a situation is what I'm kind of imagining. There's like a small Caesar's having a few friends over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Cleopatra's sort of gotten an invite and kind of snuck into the room here. And, she's leaving the bar with her drink and she knows he's around, but she kind of bumps into Caesar.
Oh my God. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Is this the line for the bathroom?
No, my name's Caesar, like the salad.
Hey, Caesar, my God, I just ate you.
You're so funny.
That's so funny. Oh my God. Hey, I actually forgot a napkin though. Do you mind if I use your pants?
Yeah. Anything, they're here to serve.
That would be awesome. Yeah, if you could just take them off, but I feel like we probably shouldn't do it. Like, my parents are here. Like, we probably shouldn't do it, or at least my dad is. We probably shouldn't do it in front of them. So do you mind if we just quickly slip into the bedroom?
Yeah.
And I'll just grab your pants?
That's cool. Yeah, for sure.
I imagine it went down something exactly like that.
I think so too.
I imagine that's the kind of person Cleopatra was. No messing around. She knew what she wanted, she went for it. She needed a napkin. When Cleopatra's brother realizes she is miles ahead of him at making an alliance with Caesar, he attempts to cause an uprising amongst the citizens of Alexandria. Ptolemy is immediately arrested, and Caesar, a great orator, calms the frenzied crowd. Caesar also reveals that Cleopatra and Ptolemy had been intended to rule Egypt jointly, something he recently discovered. He once again calls for them to fulfill their father's intentions and rule Egypt co-equally. Correctly fearing Caesar was favoring Cleopatra over himself, Ptolemy XIII gathered his armies and alliances and laid siege to Alexandria. During all this disruption and fighting, Caesar and then later Cleopatra were held up inside the royal palace. They remained inside for many months. Cleopatra and Ptolemy's sister, Arsinoe, flees the grip of Caesar, shot, and joins her brother's forces. She is soon declared queen of whatever he has going on. With the siblings having chosen their sides, the great showdown for the crown of Egypt begins. There was a naval battle, which Caesar won. A battle at the city of Pharos, where Caesar's boat was overrun by soldiers. He swam ashore, keeping one hand above water, full of essential documents. Caesar lost this battle, but retained the city and island.
Okay, that sounds like really cool that he did that, but can you imagine like the great Caesar just like, I gotta save my papers.
Doggy paddling with one arm.
It's fascinating. I just love that any of that is like made it through history. Like that's what people are remembering. That's a hilarious way to swim to shore.
Probably was a sight to see.
Yes. No one forgot. Exactly.
I did my best to either take the middle ground or the most frequently recounted story, but there's conflicting stories. It's a long time ago. Never really know, I suppose. Cleopatra was absent from these conflicts as she was pregnant with Caesar's child after their little love lockdown.
Oh my God.
The skit was very accurate.
Very accurate, yes.
A major strategic and power move on her part. Caesar, however, was only consul, his current title in Rome, until the end of that year, 48 BCE. Caesar made arrangements to become dictator over Rome, something allowed under current Roman Republic law for 1 year. This rule was created to help make fast and decisive decisions in times of crisis, like martial law or a state of emergency. There were several eras and forms of Roman governing. This period is the Roman Republic, when we talked about that. Created to have a voice and input from the Roman citizens. Caesar was the last ruler in the Republic era. Caesar becoming dictator of Rome allowed him the time to attempt to settle, once and for all, who would rule Egypt. Something he did by declaring Cleopatra's 12-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIV, to be joint ruler with the 22-year-old Cleopatra. This occurred by the traditional Ptolemaic sibling marriage.
Classic.
Another one. Take a shot.
So much worse than the previous sibling marriage.
Classic.
You gotta do what you gotta do if you know, it's not easy to get to the top. It's a long way.
It's unbelievable. I wonder who in history, like for the first time, was like, this isn't appropriate. Like, who did it take to say, and this is off limits?
How stinky was the brother's feet?
That is it. And I really sincerely hope it's like, we have to marry each other to keep it in the family in an aggressive way. But is there stuff where they're having kids?
Yeah, yeah. Not that I've come across in this story yet.
That's good.
But absolutely.
Great.
Honestly, I think it was prevalent all the time, but boy, when we sure get into the Middle Ages, they had no shame about that. You know, as the circle of who you could marry and Europe got smaller and smaller and smaller.
People are disgusting.
The aristocrats, right?
Yeah.
However, she went on living privately with Caesar. So.
Thank God.
It was just for the show of it. Everybody calm down. Calm down. Before you at me. Soon, Roman reinforcements arrived, and Ptolemy and Arsinoe pulled their armies back from Alexandria to the Nile. That counts that's a half shot. That's like a half fleet.
Yeah, I know. I'm out of wine. I literally, there's so much fleeing.
Where Caesar launched a follow-up attack. Ptolemy XIII finally died when his boat capsized upon his fleeing.
I have water.
You might be wondering how Ptolemy was released from Caesar's control.
I was.
You might also... Oh, good. You might also be wondering, who again is Ptolemy? Where are all the pyramids and mummies? Find out next week on part 2 of Cleopatra.
I'm bummed out about how many people married their siblings, but that's kind of my biggest takeaway.
I wonder if they were bummed, you know? Like, they want to go live their lives, and they're like, no, I have to marry Ptolemy the 600,000th.
Yeah, and I think we definitely established it's not the firstborn. They just literally kept naming their children. Maybe because they wanted that name to be the king, like in history, and so they just kept renaming them Ptolemy until one of them was the king.
That's one way to do it. That's one way to do it.
We'll be waiting anxiously for part 2.
Yeah.
That's our show. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed. You can reach out at historysajokepodcast@gmail.com. We are on Instagram at historysajokepod. You can find us online at lavenderfingerproductions.com. Melly?
Melly Kazel Comedy. I got Instagram, YouTube, TikTok.
You know, I start my master's program in March, so everyone just be praying for me.
Congratulations.
And I'm not on social media, so you can't tell me you're praying for me.
So don't at you?
Yeah, and Zach, I'm engaged.
That's right.
I really do want to look, because I feel like...
Do you want to plug the wedding?
Yeah, the wedding is...
Do you want some rando
It's
people?
undated, so...
History's a Joke podcast is supported by listeners like you. Find us on Venmo at History's a Joke.